Okay, let's talk about a field. What do you think a field is? I bet you think that science at some point in time has defined what a field is. Dielectric, magnetic, electrical, gravitational. It's never defined a field. I own every book ever written, including being able to translate ancient Greek. The ancient Greek word for field is kora. There has never been an explanation for what a field is in any branch of physics whatsoever. Well, ironically enough, that's certainly so humorous, since a field is not physical. A field has absolutely no physicality. Now, in the unicorn and leprechaun world of quantum physics, they've actually invented a field particle, a boson, a meson. There's absolutely zero evidence for such nonsense. Wireless power induction is not only true, it's part of, like, I think about 100 different patents. You were to go out in a complete vacuum, which does not actually exist out in space, but not a pure vacuum. But if one were able to exist, wireless power induction is, of course, a known entity. You can actually create wireless power induction, very simply. A lot of toothbrushes actually charge via induction coils. Now, they'll work perfectly fine at a distance in a perfect vacuum. There's no particles involved in dielectricity, magnetism, electricity, and certainly so not gravity. Gravity is nothing different than magnetic attraction, except it is incoherent dielectric acceleration. Now, when you argue, if you ever were to argue with an idiot about the definition of a field, since a field has no quantity, and physics only deals with phenomena, things which have constituents, a makeup, and this, of course, is the reason for the invention, and it is an invention with no basis in reality, of the boson, the meson, and gluons, and all these. This is the exact same reason when general relativity and the insanity that is nothing other than rehashed Greek atomism actually came into play. This is the reason why Tesla said, you can think very deeply and yet be insane. He went on to state in that quote that, just because you're able to think deeply doesn't mean you're thinking sanely. There are a lot of deep thinkers in padded rooms in insane asylums that are, they're totally insane, but they are very deep thinkers. Some of them are incredibly intelligent. And these are the actual idiots that make up general relativity. Now let's take a look at Maxwellian field equations here, okay? If any time you were ever to argue about what a field is, the only thing you'd have to do is bring up Coulomb's law, Gauss's law of magnetism, and the other two equations from Maxwellian field equations. And you'll notice what I have circled in the two bottom equations. These are time-based vectors. Now, let's take a look at this. These are not the definitions of what a field is, because any time you are ever to argue or debate about what a field is, some moron, some egg-headed mental midget will bring up Maxwellian field equations, Coulomb's law, Gauss's law of magnetism. Gauss's law of magnetism is actually a very interesting equation. It basically says the divergence of a magnetic field always equals zero in a closed system, which is basically a very fancy way of saying that all magnetism is a Poincaré disk model of projection. It's basically saying the entire world of phenomena and magnitude is a holographic projection. Yes, the top equation here of Gauss's law of magnetism, in very, very simple layman's terms, means that the entire universe, which is propped up by magnetism, is nothing other than a holographic projection. It is completely unreal. It's an absolutist fact that even the egghead assholes of general relativity and quantum mechanics will tell you that the volume of each and every atom is 99.9999999% nothing. Well, it's not nothing. There's actually a tremendous amount of electricity and magnetism going on there. Each little atom is its own little generator of electricity. So the air of the balloon that makes up each atom and its volume in picometers is magnetodielectricity. So it's not nothing. But it's certainly not atomistic. It is not particle-based. But all particles are nothing other than dielectric condensates. But if you were ever to argue about what a field is, they will always bring up these four equations, these Maxwellian field equations. Okay? Now the two bottom equations are time-based vectors of change. Now what does this mean? Let me put the chalkboard down. That's an old chalkboard too, from school, someone's school. What this means is, and you're going to have to think about this because most deep thinkers are not sane thinkers. Anything that you can only define by effect over a period of time is not a description. If I can only define something by how it affects something, then you've never defined it. Let's say some insane lunatic thought that unicorns existed, and the only way they could define, i.e. an equation, for what a unicorn was, is if they woke up each morning and they noticed that the supposed unicorn had eaten the grass or it had broken some leaves. So we've defined what something is by an effect only, but we've never seen it. It's like some drunken Irish people would define a leprechaun by, it's like, I woke up in the morning and there was, the bottles were spilled over in the house, and wee bit of things were scattered around. And so you've defined something that has absolutely no basis in physical reality. It doesn't even exist at all in the case of unicorns and leprechauns. But they've actually defined, and this is what they'll do if they bring up the Maxwellian field equations. Because all Maxwellian field equations, all four of them, only define something in basis of change and effect over time, but it has never defined a thing in itself. It is like trying to define something that is actually sitting there, not doing anything. And when it comes to fields, since everything in the universe is fields, and fields are not particles, and they have no physicality, i.e. field study is a huge branch of physics. If you talk about field study, it is entirely enveloped within physics. But fields are not physical. They have no quantity. There is nothing by which anyone could ever measure a field in and of itself, because a field is always an ether modality perturbation. Okay? An ether perturbation. That's correct. It's an ether perturbation. There's only one field, and there are the loss of that inertia. The ether is nothing other than inertia. The loss of that inertia is defined by an equation I have tattooed on my wrist. 1 over 5 to the power of negative 3, expression of phi cubed, 4.23606, as an expression over a period of time. But that still doesn't define what a field is, because a field is not a thing. A field is not phenomena. There is nothing, no thing, no phenomena that makes up a field. I said I have every book on earth ever written on fields, including the ancient Greeks' speakings on a field. A field in the absolute metaphysical sense of a kora, in trying to define what a field is in metaphysical dielectric parlance. But there's no branch of physics that has ever, and you can look in every, I'll give you $1 million if you can go find me a denotative description of what a field is. Go to Wikipedia, go to any scientific book that you want. Now, if you want to talk about rational physics, which is atomistic, and the truth of the universe is that everything is fields. Field modalities, okay? But fields are not particles. There is nothing that gives definition to a field, and there is no human denotation ever written by anybody other than myself and Nikola Tesla and a couple of other people, but these are not equations, that have ever told you what the hell a field is. A field has no phenomenality. Wireless, vacuum, power induction is not only a possibility, it's a reality in your wireless toothbrush. Your charging toothbrush in your bathroom, if you have one of those toothbrushes that you actually plug into the slot. It's not actually plugged in, it's put in the base of a charger. That's completely wireless. That is induction. That occurs in a vacuum. Okay, we got electricity and magnetism and electric field induction going on. Okay, where's the phenomenality there? Anytime that you want to argue with a physicist or an atomistic relativist or someone lost in the cult of atomism that thinks that the universe is a bunch of particles. Mother Nature is not a cross-eyed hooker on crack. She doesn't have a bag of magic particles. There's only 6 principles that govern the entire universe. Okay? Force and motion, one principle. Inertia and acceleration, a second one. Capacitance, resistance, permeability, and permittivity. Permeability, permittivity, capacitance, resistance, force and motion, and inertia and acceleration. Everything in the universe is governed by field pressure gradations, field pressure mediations, which is no more complicated than saying when you pull the drain on your bathtub that the water actually forms a vortex and starts going down the drain. There's a vortex on either side of a magnet. Now, think about something simply. The people that actually created AC power back in the day, Nikola Tesla and Charles Proteus Steinmetz, who perfected it, Oliver Heaviside, James Clerk Maxwell. Here I have a magnet. It's a very powerful one. I don't even like to get it close to my head. As it sits, it's pretty useless. It's fun to play with. Now, if I have a handful of these, and I'm able to spin them against a dielectric reflector, without touching, i.e. copper wire, able to spin them at incredible speeds, I'm able to create enough power to power most of this city. It'd have to be incredibly fast spinning, or larger, specifically. They should be a little bit larger than this, but there's actually a lot of people that actually power their homes off of these 2 by 2 by 1 inches using wind or water. Sitting by itself, it's a useless little toy. If I'm able to spin it at incredible speeds against a dielectric reflector, where do you think that power is coming from? Nihil ex nihilo, from nothing comes nothing. Nikola Tesla, Steinmetz, Heaviside, and the rest of the people, when AC power actually came into effect, there's one statement that's been lost in time that we don't use anymore. When they talk about AC generators spinning up and creating power, they would call it churning up the ether. The most accurate statement ever said about power generation was said by these gentlemen, but it's not something we'd ever say anymore. Nobody even knows how the hell an AC generator works. The secret of an AC generator, or even a DC generator, it is that it is a magnet inside out. The plane of inertia is on the phenomenal outside, and the actual magnetism is on the inside. The way an AC and all power generation in the world works, whether it's nuclear, steam, water-based turbine power generation, is its principle. It has the plane of inertia on the outside and the magnet on the inside, which is turned over a period of time against the dielectric reflector, which churns up the ether and creates all the electricity that's used in the entire world. But nobody knows how even an AC motor, Nikola Tesla knew, Charles Proteus Steinmetz knew, a few others do. But the rest of the world, we have our heads up our asses. Thanks for watching. Catch you later.